Welcome to the Deep Dive. We unpack complex topics to get you truly well-informed. We dig into the sources, find those surprising facts, maybe throw in a bit of humor too. Keep you hooked. Today, we're zeroing in on something fundamental. It impacts every growing community, how people get around. Specifically, we're looking at the town of Zebulon, North Carolina, and their recently adopted Comprehensive Transportation Plan, the CTP.
Right. And this isn't just, bureaucratic jargon or some dry document. Think of it more like Zebulon's 20 to 30-year blueprint. It's carefully built from data, sure, but also a lot of community voices. It's designed to help them navigate this, explosive growth while really trying to guard that small-town charm they value. Our mission today, to kind of pull back the layers, show you not just what Zebulon is doing, but why it could be a model for other towns facing similar pressures. Okay? Ready to pack this?
So for those who might not know Zebulon, maybe give us a quick picture. It's a town in Wake County, North Carolina, right? Part of the Research Triangle region.
Exactly. Incorporated way back 1907. Started pretty small. By 1997, it was only about 3.3 square miles. Population just under 4,000 people.
Okay. Pretty small town feel back then.
Definitely. But here's where Zebulon's story gets, really interesting as a case study. By 2019, its population had shot up to nearly 6,000. That actually shifted its classification from small to mid-size.
Wow, that's a significant jump.
It is. And the pace of change is what's really remarkable. A 32.7% increase just between 2010 and 2019. That far outstrips the growth in the rest of Wake County, which was 23.4%, and even North Carolina as a whole at 10%.
So much faster growth than its surroundings.
Much faster. And critically, thousands more residential building permits have been issued since 2019. So this expansion is far from over. It's a town really grappling with a growth spurt big time.
Okay, so what does that kind of explosive growth actually feel like for people living there day to day?
Yeah, the CTP gives us a clear picture. It found a staggering 75% of Zebulon residents commute alone, in their own cars.
75%, right. Wow.
And their average commute time, over 30 minutes. 30.9 to be exact.
Which is longer than the average for Wake County in the state you mentioned.
That's right. Longer than both. So, that's a lot of time spent driving, probably solo.
Sounds like it. Lots of solo karaoke sessions, maybe.
Maybe. But it's not just the time spent in traffic, right? It's the ripple effect on the town's quality of life. The public input for this CTP, it really brought key concerns to light. Things like surging traffic volumes, congestion, especially north of town where new developments are popping up.
Okay.
A noticeable increase in heavy truck traffic cutting right through downtown on Arundel Avenue, that's NC 96. Plus, these persistent gaps in pedestrian and bike infrastructure makes walking or biking less appealing, maybe less safe. And underneath it all, the challenge of just an aging rigged network trying to cope. It's kind of the classic growing pains.
And the data, it really underscores the urgency here, doesn't it? What do the numbers specifically tell us about where the pressure points are?
Well, roads like NC 96, particularly north of the US 64264 interchange up to Proctor Street, and parts of NC 97, they're already operating over capacity during peak hours. So it's not just a feeling people have, it's measurable.
Right.
And compounding that, Zebulon has seen a really worrying spike in crash rates. In 2019, it ranked ninth out of 461 North Carolina municipalities under 10,000 people for overall crash severity and rates.
Ninth, that sounds high.
It is, especially when you consider just 3 years earlier, in 2016, they were ranked 40th. So that's a significant leap. It's not just about inconvenience anymore. It starts to become about safety. Really highlights the critical need for a proactive, adaptive plan.
Okay, so given these issues, the congestion, the safety concerns, just the sheer pace of change, Zebulon was clearly at a crossroads. How does a town even begin to tackle something this complex? Where does this Comprehensive Transportation Plan, the CTP, fit in?
Yeah, the CTP is absolutely crucial here. It provides the foundational framework, the guiding principles for all future transportation decisions. But beyond just planning, it's also the town's, kind of its golden ticket to compete for vital funding. Federal, state, regional money.
Okay. The funding aspect is key.
Huge. We're talking about programs like NCDOT's State Transportation Improvement Program, the SDP in Campo's Locally Administered Projects Program, or LAPP. These aren't just acronyms. They're essential lifelines for getting local projects paid for, especially when, Zebulon is competing against much larger places like Raleigh and Cary for those same dollars. So the CTP isn't just some wish list. It's the strategic document that justifies and prioritizes their needs in that competitive environment.
That makes sense. And you mentioned adaptability. In a world world where these long-range plans can sometimes get rigid, maybe outdated, what makes this CTP flexible? How does it stay a living document?
That's a really great point, and it touches on something core to effective planning today: explicit flexibility. The CTP provides that long-range vision, yes, but it's built with the understanding that, hey, actual growth patterns will differ from the projections. They always do.
Right.
So this means recommendations aren't set in stone. They can be accelerated, they can be delayed, or even fundamentally revised based on what's actually happening on the ground. It helps avoid building, white elephants projects that seem like a good idea years ago but aren't relevant anymore.
Okay, that sounds smart. Is there a specific example of that flexibility in action?
Oh, absolutely. A perfect illustration, and it also shows the power of local input, is the decision they made about the NC 96 bypass. See, past planning efforts had always included a bypass project on the west side of town. Seemed like the standard solution.
Okay, a bypass makes sense for traffic flow, maybe?
Maybe. But through extensive, really grassroots discussion with Zebulon's town boards and residents during the CTP process, they decided to remove the bypass project entirely.
Removed it, so no bypass.
No bypass. Instead, they opted for something different, a more diverse kind of grid-like network of north-south and east-west connections. The idea was to minimize impacts on existing development and focus more on enhancing connectivity within the current fabric of the town.
That's fascinating. So they prioritized internal connections over diverting traffic completely around.
Exactly. And this isn't just some local anecdote. It's a powerful lesson, I think. It shows how genuine community engagement can fundamentally reroute that traditional infrastructure thinking. They prioritize community character and integrated networks over just, sheer vehicle throughput. It's potentially a blueprint for other towns facing similar dilemmas, proving that the best solution isn't always the biggest road.
That is a significant shift. Was there much debate about moving away from the bypass idea?
Right.
How did they build that consensus?
Well, the process involved a lot of outreach, multiple public workshops, presentations, and while, sure, initial conversations probably included folks advocating for the bypass, that was the old plan after all, but the overwhelming consensus that emerged from the new public input, the current residents, favored this different approach. Town staff and the consultants, they presented clear data. Here are the impacts of a bypass. Here are the impacts of a distributed grid. That allowed residents to make a really informed decision, one aligned with their vision for Zebulon's future. It shows how planning can be iterative, responsive.
That's really encouraging to hear. And looking way out to 2045, the CDP's projections, they still show challenges, right? Even with improvements, roads like Old Bun Road, Riley Hill Road, NC 97, NC 96, US 64264, they're still expected to be significantly over capacity without these proactive steps.
That's the forecast, yeah. It really underscores the need for ongoing action. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many other towns are facing that same kind of ticking clock, needing to act now for decades down the line.
It really does. Okay, so with these challenges and these aspirations in mind, the CTP's recommendations, they aren't just about moving cars faster, as you said. They seem deeply woven into preserving that small town character, boosting connectivity for everyone, and embracing these complete streets principles. What exactly does complete streets mean in this context? Why is it so important for a town like Zebulon?
Right. Complete streets is really foundational to modern transportation planning. It's a shift in thinking. It means designing roads that are safe and accessible for all users, not just motorists. We're talking pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, people of all ages, all abilities. It's fundamentally about equity in our public spaces, our infrastructure.
Equity in infrastructure. I like that framing.
Yeah. And for Zebulon, the CTP actually simplifies the roadway recommendations into just two main categories of right-of-way: 2-lane divided and 4-lane divided. Now, that might sound a bit rigid on the surface.
Yeah, just two types.
But it's within those categories that the real design innovation and flexibility happen.
Okay, explain that. How do they achieve flexibility within just two main types, especially in sensitive areas like downtown? How do they avoid just building wider, faster roads everywhere?
Precisely the challenge. So take an 80-foot right-of-way, for example. In one context, yeah, it could be a traditional setup. Travel lanes, maybe a landscaped median, bike lanes, sidewalks. Standard stuff. But especially in a downtown area or maybe a new mixed-use center, that same 80 feet could be designed differently. It could feature, say, a center two-way left turn lane for traffic flow, but then have wider sidewalks, room for amenities like benches, street trees, maybe cafe seating.
Ah, so the same width, but allocated differently based on the place.
Exactly. This isn't just about moving traffic efficiently. It's about creating distinct place-making environments. Essentially, designing spaces that aren't just functional conduits, but also foster a unique sense of identity, community, and pedestrian comfort. It's a strategic way to make the infrastructure serve the place, not just the vehicles passing through it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, beyond cars and the roadway itself, what specifically does the CTP propose for pedestrians? You mentioned gaps in the current network.
Absolutely. The plan is very upfront about those existing gaps in the sidewalk network. It acknowledges that these gaps make walking less attractive, maybe less convenient, and frankly, often less safe. So the CTP proposes a whole host of improvements, particularly focused on downtown. Things like higher visibility crosswalks are a big one. Simple but effective.
And they can even make those decorative.
Yeah, some can even be stamped or use colored materials to kind of reflect local character, support that sense of place we talked about. It's about making pedestrians feel not just seen, but actually valued in the streetscape.
That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
What are some of the other key features for pedestrian safety and visibility they're looking at?
Well, there's a range of proven solutions they're considering. Things like pedestrian countdown heads at signalized intersections, the ones that show how many seconds you have left to cross.
Right, those are helpful.
Definitely. Also ensuring all ramps are ADA compliant for accessibility. And features like bulbous curb extensions, basically. They extend the sidewalk corner out into the parking lane or roadway.
How do those help?
They do a couple of things. They shorten the actual crossing distance for the pedestrian, and they make pedestrians waiting to cross more visible to oncoming drivers because they're not hidden behind parked cars.
Okay, clever.
Yeah. And for higher traffic areas or key spots like near schools, they're even considering things like raised crosswalks, which are essentially speed humps built into the crosswalk itself. They physically force drivers to slow down.
Right, you can't ignore those.
You really can't. Or maybe HAWK beacons, that stands for High Intensity Activated Crosswalk. It's kind of like a special traffic signal just for pedestrians. When activated, it displays red lights to stop vehicle traffic, allowing people to cross safely. So they're looking at a toolkit of these tried and true methods, adapting them for Zebulon's specific needs.
Okay, a comprehensive approach for pedestrians. Now, what about cyclists? You mentioned Zebulon currently have basically no dedicated on-street bike facilities. How does the plan address that?
Yeah, that's a big gap currently. While there aren't dedicated on-street lanes now, the plan strongly supports building out the Greenway network. There's a previous master plan that identified over 20 miles of potential Greenway routes. These are off-street paths, great for recreation, but also potentially for commuting, separated from traffic.
So focusing on off-street paths first.
That seems to be a major component, yes, building on that existing Greenway plan. But looking ahead, future considerations do include dedicated bike lanes, especially on newly constructed roads, maybe within new mixed-use developments where you can design them in from the start. And for existing roads, particularly lower volume streets, they're exploring shared lane markings or sharrows.
Sharrows, those are the painted bike symbols with arrows, right?
Exactly. They don't create a separate lane, but they indicate that cyclists are expected and permitted in the travel lane, reminding drivers to share the road. They might leverage existing resurfacing projects when they're already paving to maybe create slightly wider outside lanes or paved shoulders where feasible, making sharing the road a bit more comfortable. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Right.
Build out the greenways, incorporate lanes in new projects, and use markings or wider shoulders on existing routes where possible.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered roads, pedestrians, cyclists. Transportation isn't just about those, though. Public transit is also key. Currently, you said Zebulon has pretty limited regional express bus service connecting it to Raleigh. What's on the horizon for transit within Zebulon or serving it more locally?
This is where things get genuinely exciting, I think, especially as a potential model for other smaller towns or more rural areas. The CTP highlights the near-future implementation of a rural microtransit service for northeastern Wake County, which specifically includes Zebulon.
Microtransit, what does that look like?
Think of it like a public version of ride-sharing, like Uber or Lyft, but run as a public service. You'd likely use a smartphone app or maybe call to request an on-demand ride within specific geographic zones. It's much more flexible than a traditional fixed-route bus that runs on a set schedule, whether people are waiting or not.
On-demand public transit. Interesting. When was that supposed to start?
Well, the plan noted it was slated to begin operations around September 2021 as part of a pilot or initial phase. And there is a decision point mentioned for March 2023 about whether to continue it based on performance and usage. Assuming it proves successful, this could be a real game changer for local mobility. Think about connecting kids to after school activities or residents to medical appointments or shopping, all without needing a private car.
That could really fill a gap.
Yeah.
What do you think the success or even the trial of a microtransit model in a place like Zebulon signifies for public transportation trends in smaller towns generally?
That's a fantastic question. I think it signifies a move towards more tailored, flexible, and potentially more cost-effective solutions, especially in areas where population density might not support traditional, frequent, fixed-route bus services running all day. Microtransit can provide that crucial connectivity without the high overhead of running mostly empty buses. It meets people where they are when they need it.
Makes sense. And looking even further out, the CTP also mentions a long-term desire for something called a town circulator route.
Hmm.
This sounds more like a traditional local bus service. What would be the benefit of that, connecting places like Town Hall, the Boys and Girls Club, Walmart, the regional center?
Yeah, a town circulator would be more like a small, fixed-route bus running within Zebulon itself. It would address that last-mile problem potentially, connecting people from, say, a microtransit drop-off or a regional bus stop to key local destinations, or just providing reliable scheduled access between important community hubs. It complements the regional and on-demand services. But this raises an even more interesting question, kind of tying back to Zebulon's identity. If that microtransit service proves its worth and continues, and if they decide to add a circulator, could Zebulon consider getting creative with it? Maybe using a more unique, perhaps even stylized vehicle for that town circulator? Something that really leans into its small town charm? Maybe like, you know how Raleigh has those historic looking trolleys for tours?
Oh, interesting. Like a Zebulon-specific trolley or shuttle.
Exactly. Something that doesn't just feel like generic public transit, but feels like Zebulon. It could transform local transit from just a utility into another unique aspect of the town's identity, maybe even a small tourist draw. Make it a truly Zebulon experience.
That's a brilliant thought, turning a functional service into something that reinforces the town's character. Love that. So, as we've unpacked here, Zebulon's comprehensive transportation plan is clearly far more than just a dry list of road projects.
Oh, definitely not.
It's really a strategic document. It seems to bravely confront these realities of, well, explosive population growth. But it does it by trying to balance that efficiency with a clear, pretty unwavering vision of preserving the town's small-town charm, its heritage. It really feels like it's about designing for people and for place, not just for pavement.
Exactly. Well said. It stands, I think, as a really compelling example of how a community can proactively plan its future. By leveraging data, sure, but also really prioritizing that public input, implementing smart adaptive policies like complete streets, exploring flexible transit options. They're working to create a transportation system that's not just about moving faster, but one that fundamentally enhances the quality of life and strengthens that sense of place for everyone who lives there.
So thinking about all this, what stands out to you, our listener, about Zebulon's approach? This proactive way of managing growth while trying to maintain character. Does the idea of on-demand microtransit, or maybe even a charming town circulator like we just discussed, does that resonate for your own community's future? Could it work where you live? We really hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective. How complex infrastructure planning can be, yes, but also how it can be both profoundly practical and incredibly aspirational, truly shaping a community's soul. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic.